which we're just, diving right back into it. This time we're going to get to know Kimberly, and we already got to know kind of like y'all's relationship with each other and how you got to know each other.
We go way back.
10 years.
Oh, wow, that's how long ago?
Kimberly is my oldest friend from Seattle, actually. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. Oh, does that mean you guys are both not from Seattle?
I moved here 12 years ago, and Dakota, when he first got, probably the first few weeks you got to Seattle,
first couple of days,
was looking for a job, and I happened to be hiring, and that's how we connected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I was curious, is the PAC Zone, was that in Alderwood area?
So,
Bellevue Square.
Yeah, so at that
Bellevue,
point in time, I was overseeing the PAC Zones in the Washington and Alaska area.
Oh, wow.
And Hawaii too at the
I think those came later, but
yes,
eventually,
yeah. So, so I was overseeing those stores at that period of time, and Dakota has always had tenacity. Like the second he starts to roll, he's like, "All right, I'm ready for the next." He's always, and so that was kind of our partnership. But when I left corporate retail, I think his story previous was very true. I went to work on a Monday and quit on Wednesday. And he was there that Wednesday when I handed him my keys. And I think we even had a discussion like, what in the office do you want to keep? He's like, well, I guess I'll keep this chair. I was like, where are you going to have the chair?
I don't remember that. Because I remembered you just spent the time like building the office in our back room as your home base. You'd spent like a couple weeks before your little time off, like going to IKEA and stuff. And so all of it was new. But.
Yeah.
And then you're like, actually not for me.
And so I did. I told him, I was like, I'm going to actually pursue my job as an artist. And today's my last day. And I handed him the keys, and he was there in that transition.
I'm curious.
But he got to see the sidelines of my transition to be an artist, and
very inspiring.
Yeah, it's very interesting because where Dakota mentioned, like I have an income that I have to make, so I can't fail. I think that same thing drove me as well, because I didn't want at that time to go back into that the role that I had, and I gave myself a year, and I said, I'm going to try to do this financially in a year, and if I can't, I'll go back. But I think that in itself motivated me to be present, be open, try several things, and create multiple revenue streams so I didn't have to go back. And so when times were really tough, I always remember, but I don't want to go back to doing that. And it's like you don't want to, you just want to keep moving forward. So you're quick on your feet, you pivot, you do all sorts of things to kind of keep yourself moving forward, and you try to sit less in those times that can hold you back.
And prior to that moment, did you already have an idea that you wanted to do this, or was it more of like a knee-jerk decision to be like, you know what, I've been thinking about this for a minute, I'm just going to do it, or did you have a plan set forth before you had quit?
Well, my plan started as soon as I can draw. I was a very shy, for those that have heard some of my podcasts and previous, but I was a very shy person. I was number 5 of 6 kids, and so in my family, I always was the one in the corner drawing. In school, I was always doodling. I had a few friends, not a lot of friends. I didn't play sports. I was always the one kind of to self-drawing. And so when I entered college, I thought, okay, I'm going to be an artist. About halfway through my journey in college, I realized, I don't know if I can financially do this. And since I was working full-time in retail, and I just started taking business classes.
Let me ask a quick question.
Yeah.
What were you not sure if you could financially do? Like what was it? Like you were not sure if you could financially be an artist? Is that what it was? Like you couldn't afford to keep paying yourself through school, or what?
Oh yes, no, it was more about the career. Because at that point in time, this is before social media. This is before, so there was this. It was a big mystery of what, and even if you could make a life as an artist. So when I was going to school to become an artist, it was a lot of art history, learning the fundamentals of art. But I didn't really know any people who were living that were making a living being an artist. So that's where I thought, I am working full time. Like, am I going to be able to rip the Band-Aid off and then go into being an artist? And I didn't see it as something that was actively going to happen. So I took art classes and also business classes. And I went the more safer route because that's what doors opened for me. When I exited college, I just kind of went through retail. I mean, I do have a pride for retail because it's given me a foundation. It's taught me a lot about businesses, and it's helped me build my own brand.
Well, on those lines, like I do a lot of things. I run my business in very similar ways that I ran a PacSun. Like, you know, a lot of the tools that you take away from those businesses, I mean, I use it. I track the same metrics that PacSun taught me to track to understand how my business is working. I set it up in a very similar way, and when it comes down to it, we're retail businesses. You know, we create a product and sell a product.
Yeah, so one thing feeds into the other. So to answer your question, in college, I didn't see the trajectory. I didn't see the next step. When I had something right in front of me that was paying my bills and I was good at it and I was getting promotions and I was building an income at it, so I just kind of went the easy route. And then you have a family and children. So I kind of followed that. But what ended up happening with myself is I was at a career with an organization that I too did not agree with the just the direction and the morals. I'll just call it what it is. It was the morals. It didn't represent who I was as a person, and I started to feel this separation. I just don't want to be here. I didn't like it. So then I cared about the people that I worked closely with. So I showed up to work every day, and I did good, but I didn't passionately love it. And I actually was at work in New York and I stayed with a friend of mine, and she's a very famous artist. And I remember being in her studio, and I was miserable in my corporate role at that point in time, forcing myself to show up every day. And I remember I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't think I could financially do it. And here I am with a living human being that's actually living a life of an artist in New York City with this amazing art studio, and is so happy. It was very hard to go back to that corporate world and continue to keep putting on that mask because I just didn't have any passion for it. But I do believe that everything happens at the right time for the right reasons, because my youngest son ended up having some medical things, and so I had to take a leave of absence for about a few weeks. And when I went back, I realized my job in my corporate world was actually getting worse. And so I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I took that leap to believe in myself. And I was like, if I can be successful at something that I'm not fully passionate about, and then what if I pursued something that I actually was passionate about? And that's why I gave myself a year. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And that's why I share with everybody, it's like, if you can believe in yourself and you do that, if you can be successful in one thing, you can be successful in other things. You just have to trust self. And to Dakota's point, you can use all of those fundamentals. Like I run my art business just like I ran my corporate business. I had admin Mondays. I researched. I did.
I remember spending some admin Mondays with you.
Yes.
Can you describe what an admin Monday?
To me, it usually ended up with us playing with her dog, her husband cooking us some amazing food, us getting coffee, me getting no work done, and her getting an okay amount of work done.
So admin Mondays for me. So in the corporate world, it was more structured, right? You go to the work, you review your numbers, you kind of plan out your week. So my admin Mondays as an artist was doing research of what my trajectory was. Like if I was going to do reproductions, if I was going to be researching art galleries, or if I was whatever it was, the business task. Like if I was social media, what platform do I need to do? My admin Mondays, I would devote that time into data research, the administrative side of the art business. I realized quickly I can't paint every single day. Some people can, I cannot. So then I would designate days to paint. And then I did give myself permission to have days off. Although, when you are an emerging artist, you really don't have days off because you work whatever day you can.
Yeah.
But it's just having more of that scheduled structure. But that admin Mondays were kind of filled with the P&L statements, going over your finances, balancing your costs to what you're spending, those type of things.
I tried doing those kinds of things, but I'm not. One of the reasons why I'm working for myself is I hate those kinds of structures, and I learned that too. Like coming from, when I was when I was leaving, you were a huge mentor for me on like how to like start and set up my business, and you'd be like, oh, I do these, like I do this day and schedule these days, and I tried doing it like that for a while and it just doesn't work for me. Like, so I can't do admin Mondays. I have admin 3 weeks. where for 3 weeks I enter all my bills in, I research products, I order inventory, I do all this stuff, and then I have painting 2 months, and then I can't switch gears like that. So
and mine was more structured that way. But it also I had 20 plus years of that structure,
of the experience of how to
of doing that every week, that I just changed the brand. Instead of working for this company, it's like working for self.
Well, I have a question for you, because you mentioned, and what do you think the role of your mentor was in your transition? Because I think you touched on it lightly, but like you talked about how here you were in New York, with somebody who was making a living art full time, and it was hard to go back to doing something. And it immediately made me think of like my favorite Gary Vaynerchuk quote. Okay. This was from a long time ago, before Gary Vaynerchuk was cool, you guys. I was into Gary Vaynerchuk, but a long time ago he had this quote, and he's like, so many people are miserable. They're miserable, working hard, making money at jobs they hate. He's like, and it drives me nuts, because you should just do what you want, because you can be equally as miserable doing something you love. So why not just do something you love? Like if you're miserable regardless, because what's the worst case? You worry, if I do it, well, I'll be poor and miserable. Well, you're already miserable, anyways. But
the word mentor is interesting, because when I'm wanting something new, I'm very private. So where I aspire to this lifestyle, to be an artist, I did this very privately. So I did sign up for classes. I took a class from my friend, but then I locked myself in my studio space. Well, before I had a studio, my office space, and I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And I tried painting, and I remember that I still have the first painting that I created, because I painted a bike. I thought it was very symbolic.
I love that painting.
I
love that one.
Funny. It's very symbolic, because I hadn't painted in over 20 years. So I'm relearning these fundamentals, and I've got this canvas, and I'm going back at this, 20 years of difference of going in different directions. So I'm painting, and I'm trying to remember, just like you would if you were hopping on a bike, trying to remember how to pedal. And it was not the best painting that I
love it. I can I strongly, I know it's the purple bike on that, that sandstone. It's like a beige cobblestone road, with the plants of.
Yeah, it's
so you already had color theory down, and
so I jumped into it, and I'm like, I gotta figure this out. And I remember my husband, because I'm financially responsible. I tell everyone that, because that's important to me. I didn't have a plethora of monies, or I didn't have anybody. I was responsible financially, and so if I didn't make an income, it would impact our livelihood. And so it wasn't that I could just, I'm going to be an artist someday and without any consequences. So I remember when I was painting this, and my husband's supportive, but at the same time, I'm sure he's like,
nervous,
holy moly, I'm a little nervous here, because he saw the first thing I created. I'm like, I'm going to be an artist, and he used to sell art in galleries.
Wait, are we talking about
Robert?
Used to be an art retailer.
So he's probably like, oh no, we're in trouble. But I did it privately. I overcome a lot of those obstacles, but that I also studied. So that word mentor, I would go online. I'm like, what other human beings out there are doing this today? And I looked at different types of art. Maybe not necessarily something that I would create, but I studied. What website did they have? What social media platforms were they on? How are they portraying their message? And I had a selection of about a few, and I still follow them today. And I kind of like, okay, well, the one thing I know in retail and anything in life is you cherry pick and make it your own. Nothing's original anymore. You cherry pick ideas, and then you cultivate your own. So I cherry picked little things that I thought I could, adapt for me, and I started doing that. But it wasn't until I joined this local artist-run gallery that I really started to find that there are mentors in art. And Lois Haskell, to this day, is still one of my mentors, because she can paint anything. And she does. She's a very prolific painter. She paints all the time. She is very wise beyond her years. And so anytime I get stuck with anything, and she's also very business savvy. And so anytime I get stuck with anything, I would ask her questions, or I'd show her some of my art, like, I'm struggling with this.
Oh,
and
you knew her in person?
Yes. So she would just give me some great tips. And so, and as I've written books, I've had her art on my walls, and I've reached out to her. But since then, I have lots of mentors for different things. It depends on what it is. So I have mentors that I appreciate how they approach business. And then I have mentors how I appreciate how they approach life. One of them is, Anessa Westcott. She's a great friend of mine. I just love her. She's so true to nature and so true to self. Less materialistic things. She's just unique to her. And there's something about that I appreciate greatly. And I think my network of friends, you, Jacob, Dakota, and Eva, and I have a great group of friends that I think each one of them, in a sense, and I know I'm not just saying this, but each one of them, in a sense, is kind of my mentor, because there's something unique to my friend group that I gain from each person. So okay. I know that's a big, huge answer.
No, it's a great answer. I think
it's hard to say that I have when I started, if I had a mentor, because I didn't technically, but I had people I admired. And then,
well, those are mentors though too. I think that one thing that I've learned, and I think that I see a lot of people, and if you do research online about how to do crazy things like become a professional artist, or any of these books you read about self starting businesses, or becoming independently wealthy, any of those things, it always, they always talk about you need to find a mentor.
Yeah.
And I've, for the longest time, I read all these things and thought like your mentor is like the one person, right? You have to have like a person that teaches you everything, right? And I remember it was an interesting thing for me. You were a huge mentor for me in business at PacSun, and then when I became an artist, you were a huge mentor for me too. And so I remember a lot of it. I didn't know anybody else that was a professional artist, and I'd ask you a lot of questions. And for a while, I remembered I would ask you questions about your business, and you'd be like, "This is how I run it." And I'd try those things, and they didn't work for me. And I'd be like, "But my mentor said."
But it's not. Everybody's not.
And this is how this is supposed to work, right? And then but then I met somebody else. I don't remember the exact situation. I do remember one time we were talking about like how to run the art business, and you were telling me. You might not even remember this, but I remember it because you had broke it down. You were like, there's two ways. You can sell a lot,
yes,
or you can sell a few that are very expensive.
Yes,
yep, right.
Few, yeah.
And you, the way I felt like you were doing it is like I felt like you were trying to be like there's a red pill and a blue pill, but you were like holding the red pill like kind of over here, like, putting the blue pill in front of my face. You're like quality, right? Sell bigger. And that might not have been like your whole intention, but that's the way that
That's all I do.
That's how you run your business. It was like you make more, and you were like you don't want to sell a lot of little things, and you were like you don't want to do festivals, do you? Because that can there's some people that think this about festivals and blah 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 blah. And so I had this mentality for a while, and I'm not saying you led me astray, even though you kind of did, Kim. No, I'm kidding. But
the truth comes out.
It's like then I found the quality thing wasn't working for me as much, right? And so I met another person who was like, I do some festivals, like you should try some. Yeah. And so I did one or two of them, and I remember being like, this is crazy, right? Like I just did way better than I've been doing with my other models. So then that's kind of when the world opened up to me, and understanding like the role of the mentor doesn't have to be like the mentor, right? We all see it as your the guy from Karate Kid or Rocky Balboa's, but like and it's like Kim said, like I pull the same thing. Like Kim is one of the people when I need to understand like the attitude that I need to approach something in my business with. Kim is the person that I reach out to. Like if I have a practical thing that is concerning like how is like my brand or my personal reputation going to be like affected by these decisions, I reach out to Kim. If there's something that I have like for festivals or like how do I grow the festival business, I have a guy, he has a tie-dye empire, like it has nothing to do with me. He's an old hippie with a handlebar mustache who wears a feather in his hat, and I reach out to him because he's a genius in this, right? And so
that's the trick.
But finding your mentors I think is like a huge thing, and that's something that I learned a lot from you, and watching you even with your business too, like watching you find different mentors like helped me understand like find your mentors, and you don't even have to approach it as like I think people think you have to call somebody and be like, may I be your student, will you be my mentor? It's like no, you can just Google somebody you like, somebody you're impressed by, and and see what you can learn from them, right? Based on what's already out there.
Do you guys think that there's any difference between like having a mentor that you can communicate with, like Kimberly, and you having Kimberly as your mentor, or like versus like just seeing someone who's online that you admire and try to draw from them?
I think both, but
Yeah,
I actually
agree.
think that there's an advantage to being able to pick up the phone or have a communication with that person that's mentor, because then if you specifically have a question. So in the corporate world, like recently I had reached out to this gentleman named John Jenkins. You know, I've watched him, or not watched him, but I've seen this path that he was on, and he's gone through, you know, he's grown his careers, and I'm so curious about that. Like, how do you get from point A to point B to point C to point D? Like, how do you do that? Like, I was generally curious. So I talked to him. I think the phone call was maybe 30 minutes. But I asked, and you learn a lot, and I shared this because in that short amount of time with this individual, he said, always be curious. And I can relate to that, because when I go into a room, I am generally curious about the people around me. He said, always be interviewing. And I think that's a very smart thing, because I can relate to that in my art business, because a lot of the things that have evolved in my art business is because no matter who I meet or what I'm doing, I'm present and I do what I say I'm going to do, because it's my brand. And so in a way, I'm always interviewing. So if I went to go help Lois hang artwork at a winery, as I met people at the winery, I'm presenting my best self, myself, right? I'm professional in all ways, and then it's led to great things. And so that's just been my kind of motto, is, you know, just always do what you say you're going to do, and just always be. So there's some things that he said that in his words that I could relate to, and it made sense to me. And sometimes when you talk to that person, you can have this two-way dialogue. But also, yes, there are individuals that I've never really talked to, and I've just watched from afar, and I kind of see what they're doing, and you can kind of read between the lines. Like, you notice that maybe they aren't putting a lot of political messages in their social media, and then I follow some that do. And
That's another thing you advised me. Robert advised me against.
Yeah.
Really, he's like you don't want things that are too controversial, but for me,
that's
those
you.
are the things that do the best, right?
Exactly.
It's your anyways.
Which is why you have to be so confident in self, is because what works for one person may not work for someone else. And I think when that was one of, I tell this, my husband is supportive in a lot of ways, but my favorite way is my husband's not supportive as far as, oh, you're going to be amazing, you're awesome. He's more supportive as when I have an idea, he immediately tells me why it's going to fail. And in the beginning, I used to be like, oh, yeah, you're right. But when I'm really passionate about something, and he says, this isn't going to work, and here's why.
That's when you know it's good.
I'm like, but I really want this to work. So I start solving those problems. And when I solve those problems, then I'm more successful. So I like it when he tells me, this isn't going to work out, and here's why. To me, that is just as supportive as someone giving me positive encouragement.
It's kind of like how... Oh, sorry. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's exactly like I was discussing in the previous little segment about how I had my roommate who I look up to a lot, and I think that the role of the critic, right?
Yeah.
The role of the critic that you trust as an artist is like a very, very, very necessary thing, right? And that sounds like that's a role that you've always told me, and it's always understood that Robert's fulfilled for you, right? Is he's able to criticize your work in a constructive way, right?
Yes.
And then, but it works two ways, in that you need to be able to accept that criticism, right? And know that it is criticism, it's not fact, right? So but you need those people around you, right? The people that can say, like, when you have ideas, you can bounce the ideas off it, and know that they won't just say, well, you're amazing and everything you do works out, that they will pick it apart for you, right? And be like, well, you have this idea. This could be an obstacle. It could not work as this. It could not work as this, and help you. And that helps you develop the ideas further, right? That helps you create something good. And anyways,
that's kind of So there's mentorship is all kinds of shapes and sizes in there. You're drawing inspiration and trust from others, but I do, like I said, my friend group is amazing, and it's an amazing support system. And I have critics, I have the positive influencers, I have people who feel like they give me the ability that I'm capable of doing anything. And then I have those that are challenging and I have to solve problems for. So I've got it all.
Well, I think it's like really amazing that despite the fact that a lot of the people who are your mentors, like all of us here, and then even Yev and my mom who do art, we have completely different art styles.
Yes.
And you yourself have something that's completely unique and definitely has a message to it. Do you feel like that has ever been an issue with you, like you developing your art styles, like trying to find a message to cling on to, or did you like already know that going into it?
No, I created things because that's how I see it. And I remember the very first time that I started showing my artwork, there were a few pieces to, like Dakota would say, I didn't think they were very good. And people were like, oh no, you need to put that up in the gallery. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So I remember bringing artwork and hanging it up and holding my head down because I was embarrassed of it.
Oh.
But then one of the things that was an advantage for me working at this artist-run gallery is because you get to do shifts and you get to watch patrons go through the gallery and you interact with them and they don't know you're the artist.
It's
and
so fun. It's
see,
so fun.
It's fun. Oh, I love it.
Is it sarcastic fun? Or
Oh no, it's so fun because you get the mix of it. You get people coming in and they'll tell you they hate your work without knowing that it's yours, and you'll get people coming in and telling you like that the person who made it must be a genius, and they don't know it's you. And you're just like it's fun every time, no matter what they say. You get
Which is
raw
why I never
feedback.
wore a name
Oh, it's
tag.
like undercover boss type
I
thing.
loved it. Yes, because you get and so for those that didn't enjoy my artwork, whether it was too bright or they didn't like the texture, like that's okay. My artwork isn't for them, and it actually built my confidence up because it made me understand more of what my style was, hearing what people didn't like in it. And then for those that liked it, I started to see this pattern of what individuals saw in it. And one, the bright colors, it evokes happiness and smiles. Like people, like every time I look at this art, it just makes me smile every time I see it. I always hide hearts in it, but I didn't tell anybody. It was just my thing. And when I started sharing that story, I realized my art is an adventure. Not just because it's a landscape, whatever it is that I painted, it's an adventure because families would bring in their kids in, and every time I had a new showing of artwork, they'd be like, okay, find the hearts. And so it became interactive.
Oh, okay.
So not only did it invoke happiness from the bright colors, but it became an adventure. It actually bridged the gap of going into a gallery and feeling you need to be quiet, you need to be stale. It just kind of created this different texture to it. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But the other piece to it is my art does have a lot of texture. And I would, working in the gallery, I would see an individual look at it and they'd look around and they wanted to touch it. About 99% of the people walk in there want to touch it, but they're told no, they can't. So I would whisper, I'm like, it's okay, you can touch it. And they would just get so happy like a giddy little child, like, oh, this is so fun. And so then I started to recognize what people liked about my work. Mm-hmm. And then you start embracing that style more. And you give yourself permission, because I was trained traditionally to paint like photo, hyper-realistic. And I focused on that at one point in time. I didn't paint for 20 plus years. And then now I'm very impressionistic. Impressionism is harder for me at the beginning. But over the years, I become more and more comfortable with it because I embrace that this is how I see this pathway with trees. And I enjoy it more of how does Kimberly see it. And when I recreated Klimt's The Kiss, that painting already exists. It's been recreated by many artists, but it's like my version of it is very unique to my style. Just like when I've recreated some Monet work, it's like this is Kimberly's version. It's given me permission to be my own self.
That's so awesome.
I have a question. I've always wondered: is there a reason you paint so many pathways? Is there something behind that?
My
There's so
husband
many.
tells me
There's
because
so
I'm
many
trying to
pathways.
escape.
You're trying to run away.
Like Mary Poppins just hop into the painting.
I think for pathways, they're probably, maybe when I talk to somebody, they probably will kind of give a deeper meaning behind it. But I'm captivated by pathways. It's that curiosity for adventure. We never know what's going to be the end of that, but it is that curiosity of where does this go. So when I create paintings, I like to create this bright pathway, because it's like, yes, you can have this beautiful landscape, but when you add this pathway into it, it kind of invites the viewer in, like, let's see where this is going to go. And I don't know, I like creating them.
That's a really cool concept.
Yes.
Another thing I've noticed that really makes your art unique is that you pull from the tube exactly.
Yeah,
like,
let's pull from the tube.
Yeah, sorry, that's what is terrible
by that,
phrasing.
By that, I'm just gonna say she squirts paint onto her finger from the tube, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And then
Because it's instant results. Again, I have friends that take their time and they love mixing colors. That's fantastic. I was taught that, and we used to have to get swatches of clothing and have to match it exactly.
I don't
in some
understand
of
it.
our
Every time I
classes.
mix two colors, I'm gonna be like, "This is gonna be purple," and it turns out brown. I'm like, all right, let's try making some nice orange, and then it turns out brown. And then I'm like, all right, let's just try normal blue. We'll just pour blue out of the tube, and it'll come out brown.
Instant results. I'm all about instant results. So I don't enjoy that journey as much. Just as like I don't enjoy drawing, but I like painting, and I like the fast and furious. And so getting a color that I need, I have a set group of colors that I typically paint from. I know how they interact and work with one another. So when I'm looking to add a highlight or I'm looking to add a deep value, I just scoop up that color and I squeeze it right from the tube. And I know how they play. And I know how they play with each other on the canvas.
What is the biggest canvas that you've worked on as of late?
Well, I did a triptych one time, and I think...
Doesn't count.
Does it?
That's three
That's
canvases.
three tiny canvases.
Three tiny canvases. Yeah, doesn't count.
Probably 50 by 60.
Oh wow! Is that
Maybe?
kind of roughly the same? Like
That-
around,
That was probably a...
That one's
30
36. That's 36 by 48.
Yeah. It's Cody saw.
yeah,
math
we're
meeting
pointing
over
at a painting that's in the background that
That's
my mom
36
has
by
done.
48.
I think that, I like painting big. It was at Parkland Gallery, and this one it actually sold pretty quickly. I would have loved to met the individuals that bought it, but it was a forest scene, and I remember just getting circles into it, and I just had a lot of fun creating a whole bunch of circles after I finished the painting, and I kind of liked how it looked, and so I titled the painting Enchanted, and I hung it up at gallery. It took up a whole wall, and yeah, it sold pretty quickly after.
How do you come up with the names for your paintings?
So this is it. So Dakota and I struggle coming up with titles. So he's planting this seed with me. There's times I struggle coming up with it. And so we were sitting there at the gallery one time, and he says, Yankee Candles does a really good job coming up with names. And so I had all these fall paintings. I need a title. And
It's because you were coming up with you were trying to come up with the titles for your feature show, and you were like, I don't know what to name them all because they're all pathways and autumn. And I was like, just go to Yankee Candle. Look at their autumn candle line names.
So you pull it up, and they use these great descriptive words, and I'm like, oh, I like that. Like enchanting or traversing. I don't know.
Soft autumn breeze. Or
Sponsored by. No.
So we joked about that. Yes. So.
Yeah, that's actually really smart because I think I also struggle with that the most too because I just want to make the art. I don't want to have to write a description, and then especially when you have to post it on the social media, then it's like, okay, now I have the title is everything. If I mess up the title, people are going to be interested in the artwork.
So I kind of lean into that sometimes, and I just take the Fall Out Boy approach, right? Which if you're not familiar with Fall Out Boy and how their song names are obnoxious, and like a song will be called "Our Lawyers Encourage Us to Change the Name of This Song," or like and it's just like really stupid things like that, and
That's
so
clever, though.
so I do stuff like that to my paintings because I think that the title is overrated. Sometimes there are people that's like, oh, the title will make it, and sometimes it does, right? Like I have this painting of this kid, and he's like got these balloons, and they're made out of pills, and he's like flying in the air, right? And the painting is titled "Raise Your Child," and then in parentheses, "To New Heights." And I think it's very clever, right? Because it's like telling people maybe don't put your kid on drugs, just spend more time with them. But then it's also like,
There's a little bit of punnery going on.
It's fun. It's fun, right? But then I have paintings. Like sometimes I'll just come up with a painting, and be like, what's a really weird thing that I could name this that will make people think more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that has nothing to do with the
That's
painting,
clever.
but if I name it, somebody will stare at it and try to figure out how they're correlated, and then it'll just make them think, and that's fun for me. I don't know. But.
Yeah, that does sound
And
interesting.
I think titles can sometimes limit your artwork too, because one of the things that I found when I create something, it might resonate a memory of mine, but when you look at that same
something
painting,
different, yeah.
it might resonate completely different feelings. And so I stopped telling people what inspired this painting, and I became more curious
Ask instead.
on what they see in
does
the
it make
painting.
you feel?
'Cause I love that. Like, what do you see in this painting? And then they share their story. And so titles to me can sometimes limit it because it can remind them of something completely different. So it's an interesting journey. So Yankee Candles it is, and Fallout Boy it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other option is to go like the boring artist route and just name it like Trees 1 and then
Yeah.
Trees 2.
I've done that
Trees
too.
3.
Sunflower Study 1.
Yep.
Sunflower
Study
Study
2.
Untitled 1, Untitled 2.
and then if you want to add my sarcasm to it, you'd be like, Sunflower Study 1 in C minor.
Yes. So titles are an interesting piece. Just like finishing the edges of the paintings, there are parts that I enjoy the most, and there are parts that are necessary.
But not your favorite type.
But not my favorite. The edges of it, finishing, because I do gallery wrap canvas where I finish the edges on the outside. That is sometimes my least favorite part.
Oh.
But I have learned to flip that frown upside down. Now I painted a sunset for someone, and on that side of the painting I put a bumblebee, or I just put something goofy on there that has no relevance to the painting whatsoever, and so I've been having fun doing that.
That's cool. It like adds another way to like it's kind of like the heart situation where it's a
Yeah.
little something that people can look out for.
It gives me something to do. Like, wonder what I'm going to put on the side of this
Yeah.
painting versus, oh man, I have to paint the edges.
Sometimes you just feel like, especially with commissions, you have to, like, it's somewhere, you just have to put a little bit of your own personality. Like,
Oh,
if
yeah.
they did, you feel like not enough of your
Oh.
personality snuck through, so you're like, I'm just going to slip
There
it
you
in
go.
right here,
Do
right
you-
on the side, little bumblebee.
Do you guys name your commission when people commission you for art? You
I
guys give
ask them
titles?
first,
I
and
don't.
if they don't come up with a title and they want me to create it, then I do.
Okay, because I know some people who are just so much of a fan of the artist, they really just want their whole take on it, and other people are like, I want you to do this with a list of criteria, and then name it that. And
Well, there's sometimes I'll get a commission painting, and it'll be something that I've already created, and they're like, I like this, but I need it in this size, or and obviously every time I paint something, even if I did try to create something exact, it never comes out the same. I always allow the paintings to go in its own
You're a gardener,
direction.
not an architect. That's what they
There
call
you
that.
go. I'm a gardener, not an
Gardeners
architect.
plant seeds and see how they grow.
There you
Architects
have it.
a design and it must meet the design.
No, I'm definitely not an architect then.
which one do you identify with?
I'm a gardener as well.
Okay.
So on those paintings, I put like sunrise revisited or something revisited if it's something that I've recreated. But, yeah. But a gardener is a good way to say it. I'm not methodical like Zach is. Zach is very methodical, which is why I think I struggled playing with the ruler
Oh yeah.
in that class that he taught here.
I've never been the person to color within the lines. I distinctly remember that when I was younger, my sister, when we both got coloring books or anything, she would always like delicately be within the lines, and me both a mixture of it being terrible motor skills and then like being impatient. I was always just like scribbling all the way outside. But I've seen how that's like kind of seeped into my own art style at this point. I really like the non structured edges and things that kind of just let your eye wander off in a different direction, and then it allows me to have more freedom with like my art being not as structured and just free flowing. But
Well, within that, there's something. So we talked in the last podcast about, we talked a little about the students and their approachability. I often encourage people, if you're struggling finding your style, recreate something that already exists. Take one of the masters.
I do that a lot too.
And do your version of it. Like, do your darndest to get it to look exactly like it, and don't be frustrated when it doesn't come out like it, because what you'll see is that difference is your style.
That is 100% how I learned how to make my own style. Is I started out and I was like, I like Banksy, I like Shepard Fairey, I like this person, and I'd be like, before my intent was to create my own original work, I'd be like, I want to try to do this because I think it looks cool, it looks fun to try to make this, and I'd try to make it and I'd fail, and I'd be like, what I made looks cool though. And then you like deconstruct your failure, right? Like, how did I get to that result? Because I want to repeat this now.
Your failure makes it yours.
Yep, and then you failure, especially in art. I mean, in any part of life, failure should be like the biggest teacher. But in art specifically, you want to fail. Failure is what creates something new. It's like, but the whole joke is Bob Ross's happy little accidents, but it's not really a joke. I mean, it's how art works, right?
Yeah.
Art is experimentation, so you fail. Something happens that you didn't expect, and then the painting takes on a new life, right? It's failure after failure. A finished painting for me is like 30 failures stacked on top of each other. You know, especially as a gardener, you know, like I said, there's gardeners and architects. I think architects are different. You know, they're like, you know, I'm painting from reality. This doesn't look like the beach that I was at, so it's not successful. But for me, it's like I've just made a new beach, you know. And
Well, and on that note too, it's one of the reasons why I get asked, why do you not finish any of the paintings when I'm teaching a class and I'm doing a step by step? I immediately learned not to do that. I give them steps, and then they try to make it look like mine. And when they say, oh, I screwed up, and I'm looking at this brilliant thing that they painted, and I'm like, what do you mean you screwed up? And they're like, it doesn't look like yours. I'm like, forget mine. Look at what you created. That's awesome. And so I will go around like, you know what I love about what you created? Look at what you did that's better than mine. And I shift that mindset so they can see this magnificent thing that they created. And it's like, that's why I'm like, I tell them at the beginning, I'm not going to finish this painting. I'm just going to give you the steps. Don't make it look like mine. Embrace. You might paint really heavy. You might paint really thin. You might paint skinny. You might paint round. Like, that's okay. Whatever it is, and I'll go around the room, and if you get stuck on anything, I'm there to support you. But embrace your particular style, and you'll have everyone paint the same painting, and they all hold them up and they look differently. That's beautiful, because you don't want to, especially when you're trying to learn something, you admire it, but it doesn't have to look just like it to be magnificent. It's basically what I'm saying, and I think that's awesome that you found that same thing with your art. Interesting how that is. How about you?
With mine, I think that when I teach a class here, and that's the only like reference I have, because otherwise I don't really try to teach people how to do art in my style specifically. But I think it's kind of along the same steps. My biggest message that I try to put out there is that I want people to make mistakes within their art, because kind of like you guys were saying, like every failure that you do is something you didn't expect, or you might learn something new from it, and then it might end up even loving it more than what you were initially trying to do. And so that's
why I love the name of this place. It's Art Labs. We're scientists. We're out there experimenting for the sake of innovation and moving forward, right?
Exactly. We're like Beaker over here.
We play, right? What happens if we mix these two chemicals? We could die, or we could create a masterpiece that saves the world.
But I think it's all perspective, right? You can look at something like, that's a failure. Or you can look at it as like, well, I learned something from that. It's cool. Like even the paintings that may not be ready to go on a gallery wall, there's still something great about that, because I either learned something from it, or there's something great that comes from it. And I think that's my attitude in life as well. It's like anytime something happens, I have a choice. I can either be sad that it happened, or I can be like, well, this is happening for a reason. What am I going to gain from it? And I choose to put my energy in the latter. Like I want to put my energy in the things that I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be frustrated. I want to be happy. So let me immediately find a way to where I can enjoy this.
Yeah. And on that note, do you think you have a particular message that you want to put out there for the world with your art?
You know, that's
Or is that too? Is that like
no.
Like,
I think this is a really great question, because my art is bright and is happy, and I really noticed this as we're kind of going through this. I don't know, the last 5 years in the world, it's like there's a lot of ugly out there. There's always ugly in this world, or at least around me. That's just a standard.
Everything seemed calm and standard as operating procedure to me. No.
So with all this ugly in the world, it's like I choose not to get frustrated in things that I can't control. But what I can do is I can put pretty things there. And I can't take pain away from others, but what I can do is I can teach you a skill that can bring you joy. We were going to with these art camps with these young children, and it's like I just started learning these things. Like I started again putting my energy on the things that I can do, and again that's probably my message with my art is you can enjoy it. It's like I guess looking at things with the glass half full and putting those choices and things. So, but anyway, that'd probably be my message. And I do approach. They are bright. I approach my life very happy. Maybe in a lot of ways similar. What do you think, Dakota? Do you think that my art represents who I am, since you've known me for a decade?
I think it does. I think in a lot of the ways that you just said, I feel like your art represents having a brain full of sunshine. Like,
I know. Can we switch?
I mean, you are such a sunshiny person. You know, you're a very positive mental attitude. You have a very positive way of looking at life and of looking at even negative situations. And I think that I mean, it's weird. It's weird because art, it's very subtle, but knowing you and seeing your art, it's like you can see all of that come out, you know, in your art. You can see like your personality and the way you view the world come out in how vibrant, you know, like you paint an autumn path, and of course we all know like fall is pretty, yeah, that's a given, but like with the way you make fall paintings, it has like purples and bright greens and bright blues and colors that are not real in fall, but the painting looks very beautiful in fall, and it's just like a dramatized...
Lots of happy.
It's what the nostalgia of fall feels like.
A dramatized visually. Vision of how beautiful fall is.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's the choice of where you choose to put that energy. And it's not saying that, you know, sad feelings are not valid. All of those feelings are valid. We all have them. We all have dimension in our life, right? Mm-hmm. But I just choose to put more of my energy on those bright things. And so, yes, that's how my art portrays the world. Here's some pretty bright things to give us that pause or that 2 seconds of enjoyment to distract us from maybe these ugly things that are out there.
I think it's wonderful that, in a way, I think we all do that with our art. Like, even though I paint, like, typically, like, not pretty things and probably don't even really invoke feelings of happiness to everyone, but me doing it invokes happiness within me, and then other people who relate to that, it does the same for them. Like, being able to see that, it has the same effect. And that's so cool that, like, no matter what you do, you putting yourself out there for the world allows other people to see and be inspired.
Absolutely.
By that.
I think it's interesting. I wonder if you guys have the same. I have an interesting thing that'll happen to me a lot, right? Where I'll make paintings, and at the time I make them, I don't have like an idea. I don't think like, you know, this is what I'm gonna make, or even as I'm making it, I'm not like, oh, this is my mood, or like there's a lot of times I just make because I'm going through the motions, right? Because I'm an artist and I know I need to create, and it won't be till like years later where I'm hanging that painting somewhere and somebody asks me what it means, you know, where I'll start to think back and I'll start to like tell them like, this is where I was at in my life when I made that. And it's crazy how deeply this painting that has nothing to, you know, it's just a painting of like a person, you know, and you're like, it's crazy how much this person like embodies that whole moment in time and that feeling without me even meaning to. Like, do you guys ever have that like experience with your paintings where years down the road you don't realize there was meaning behind it until somebody asks you about it, or somebody else even points those things out, like, this is the vibe that you give me, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was feeling like.
So for me, the way I project that is there's times where I struggle through a painting. It could be my mindset, it could be just how I'm feeling that day, or maybe I'm just the subject matter, whatever. It's just difficult and I struggle through it. The outcome of that painting may be beautiful, but I didn't enjoy the process. So at first I'd be like, oh, this painting's ruined, because I didn't appreciate what the end result was. All I could think about was the journey that led me to that result, and I didn't enjoy it. And then the paintings that I loved, and I had so much fun, I was dancing and I was, you know, painting, just having a good time, I enjoyed the process. And so for me, I was quantifying my paint, or qualifying my paint, saying this one's great, this one's not good. And that's, again, I just started pulling myself out. It was not about my journey that makes the end painting, and that's why I stopped talking about those things, is I want to know how it invokes other people's feelings. And some of those paintings that I struggled through that I didn't like, and every time I look at it, could be 5, 6, 10 years later, I still look at that painting and I'm like, oh, because I remember how I felt. Someone else is like, oh, I love this. It's like, great, that's fantastic that they don't see that that journey that I had through it. And then there's some paintings that I still own today that haven't sold that I think are brilliant, but I had such a good time painting them. So I think for me, painting is about just how do you feel, and I think sometimes if you are, that's the therapy that ties into it, is if you are struggling, sometimes it's good to struggle and get it out. I know that I really leveraged this art laboratory during the pandemic, because when I was struggling to paint, I would come here and just play with paint. And it wasn't about creating any one thing. It was just about just moving things around, and it was just made my brain happy to be able to do that.
Something about just getting a big thick pile of goop and just like
moving
it on the canvas with Jenny. Like, that's like,
in a way it's akin to those, you know, you've seen those slime things that are trending.
yes.
Everyone just has those big slime balls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how doing textured painting is for me. I'm like, it just enhances the whole experience.
Yeah.
That it's texturally and it's fun. And I actually, Andrew Huberman, he's a professor out of Stanford. I went to this event where he was speaking at, and he does these podcasts, and he talks about the brain. And one of the things that they were talking about is, people have really dug deep into diet and how that can help you focus a lot with your brain. And people have dug into sleep and how that's helped with your brain. And someone asked the question, what's the next thing? Like, if you hit max capacity on those two, what's the next thing that we do to evolve ourselves? And he said creativity. No, he said creativity.
Drugs? Is that what you said? Drugs? Methamphetamine, let's do it.
Yeah, you're like, edibles? No. He said creativity is really what they're leaning into, and they're finding that people who are able to, when they have to have a really high focus, if they break away and then focus on something creative, it actually gives that energy back. And I've been saying this for so long.
It's really interesting. Is like I'm remembering like some of the times where I've been the most hyper focused. Like the last time, and because I'm a very ADHD person, I struggle with focus a lot. Right. The last time I went through like a really good phase of like hyper focus, where I was mentally doing very well. I was very organized. I was very effective, and I was very happy and creating a lot. What I was doing was I told myself that I had to wake up, and the first thing that I needed to do was draw before breakfast, right?
Good.
And so I had my alarm. I did it specifically. I set my phone so it was underneath my iPad, which is what I draw on. And my coffee pot would go off 15 minutes and make my coffee 15 minutes before my alarm would go off. And that was also right next to the phone and the iPad. So in order to turn my alarm off, I had to pick up my iPad, right? And then the coffee was already there, so I just grabbed the cup of coffee and I'd walk over to the couch and draw for 2 hours every day. And it's crazy how good I felt like during that time period. I mean, I was exercising every day, like all of the stuff. Interesting. It's interesting.
So,
I'm just
on that note,
gonna have to think about that.
My most productive time is when I was, working and doing something very administrative, analytical, report reviewing, whatever you want to call it. When I was doing that, and I'd hit a wall, and it's like I can't do any more analyzing of those reports any longer. I would grab something to eat, and then I would start painting, and it's like I had all the energy in the world, and that creative flow was at its peak. And then when I hit that wall from a creative standpoint, and it's like my creative energy is depleted, somehow it recharged my batteries, and I can go back in, and I'm like this master mathlete, where I'm able to go through all of this stuff, and so I started to lean on that, and so I remember one specific year where I had a little bit on my plate. I was working a full-time job and painting full-time and writing a book. And I was writing a book for a publisher, and so I had to have certain batches done by these timelines. And what I did is I got up early in the morning, and I would write for a couple hours, have breakfast, go to work, work that full 8-9 hour day, come home, and it's like, I remember driving home thinking, I'm exhausted. But I was like, nope, you need to get in there because you have a show coming up and you've got to paint. But when I go and I paint, I was creating these things in a lot faster rate, and so I recognized that my mind was working at its max capacity. So I realized that about myself, and it was really cool to kind of tap into that.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of like the flow state. Would you describe it as that?
I consider it. I call it my enlightened because I felt very enlightened in whatever avenue, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, when you were talking about that, it got me thinking. I was wondering, because when you were mentioning how you were doing one creative aspect, and then that allowed your other part of yourself to recharge, I'm thinking about all the people in the world who don't tap into the creative aspect and are constantly, just because of the way society is structured with the way you're supposed to work, are always just in that one mindset, like over depleting it and not giving it any space to recharge.
Like the only thing measurable is like how productive you are. It's like there's been all these studies about how we have become to idolize being busy, right? We've come to put not having time for people and for enjoyment on a pedestal as like this thing to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Like it's now like a really good thing to tell people, and they're like, how have you been? Like you want to be like, I've been very busy, right? Like that's a good thing, instead of saying I've had a lot of leisure time. I've spent a lot of time with my kids, my girlfriend, and my spouse. Like that's,
it's a balance.
Yeah, and people look down on that. Are you lazy? Like
I feel
you
like
got to save the time for.
if you're in a world where you are hitting a wall and you feel like you are burnt out, if you're in that corporate world, or you're, whatever your job is, maybe it's raising your kids, whatever it may be, if you feel like you're hitting that wall, my challenge would be, to Dakota's point, get a notebook, put it next to your coffee pot if you drink coffee, or whatever it is that you do in the morning, have breakfast, make eggs. I always encourage students, draw your coffee cup. Every morning, just draw it. You don't have to paint something for hours. You could just do it for 10, 15 minutes. Just doodle the same thing. I actually sent a picture of my desk. I draw the same flower over and over and over and over and over again. I probably drawn the same flower 1,000 times. And so sometimes it's just a couple of minutes. So creativity isn't like, that's why people don't go to the gym. It's like they don't have time. Well, because, sometimes exercise doesn't have to be driving to the gym and working out for a lengthy period of time.
Yes, it does, Kim, because if I keep it compartmentalized in my brain like that, then I have an excuse. It's that the gym's close to me closed. Don't be telling me I can do push-ups in my living room.
Yes, you can
doesn't work like that.
Your body is the gym.
Doesn't work like that.
So that's my tip. If you feel like you're hitting that wall, pick up a pad of paper and draw whatever's in front of you. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to draw it again tomorrow and the next day, and that little bit of creativity is going to give you tons of energy to reapproach whatever you're doing.
That's awesome. What I'm hearing from both of you is that having limited time that you're spending on doing something, like not just like you have to do it every day, but I'm going to do this and I'm only going to do it for 10 minutes, or I'm only going to do it for 2 hours. Do you feel like that also helped you in that process? Or
I think I read a book called Atomic Habits a while ago. I absolutely love it. It's very, very good. And he talks about how most people don't reach their goals. Most New Year's resolutions, people fail within months, right? I mean, it's just a common thing. And a lot of the reason is because people, they try to move the mountain, right, instead of a couple rocks. And so when you're making goals, if you're trying to maintain habits, right, if you're like, I want to draw for 3 hours every day, like you could take apart your schedule and be like, and make the time for it and be like, that's practical, sure, like I could fit that into my schedule. But that's a big lift, right? I mean, that's hard to maintain every day. What if you have a busy day, right? What if one day a family member calls you and needs you to talk to them for a while, and then after that, like an unexpected issue happens in your home, and all these things happen, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I didn't meet my 3-hour goal, right? But if you take it into a bite-sized piece, like, I'm only going to draw for 5 minutes today, right? Tell yourself I'm only going to draw for 5 minutes. Only allow yourself to draw for 5 minutes, even sometimes. It makes it a much more manageable thing to do. And not only that, but a lot of times you'll find if you try to limit yourself, right? If you try to tell yourself, I need to sit down and paint for 3 hours, for me, I will be like, ugh, that's a long time. Within 10 minutes, I'll already be feeling like it's been 3 hours and I'm tired. Yeah. But if you tell yourself you can only paint for 10 minutes, like 20 minutes will go by, the alarm will go off, and you'll snooze and you'll be like, but I'm not done, right? Like, yeah. and so, I mean, it's a stupid mind game, but I play that with myself because it's effective. So.
Let's piggyback on that. So I had a collection of paintings. I call them like Color Me Happy, because sometimes you don't, like, I have to create a painting, and that roadblock of, I have to create a painting. This is going to take 3 days worth, 36 hours, or however long I needed to devote to that. Sometimes there are weeks, sometimes it's 2 weeks or longer. I would say, you know what? Today I'm just going to put the background on. I'd go in my studio and I'm like, I'm just going to put the background on, no pressure. But then after I got the background on, I got into this flow and I created this painting. And it's like, it's these mind games that we do for ourselves. And then sometimes I go in there and I do just create the background. Because that's what I had energy for that day. And so it's just allowing yourself and understanding how to be in tune with self, and not overcommitting. Because I think when you overcommit, you can
talk yourself out of it.
But at the same time, when I'm under crunch, man, I've been able to...
Oh, there are those times, man. Sometimes a fire under your ass is perfect.
Yeah,
like, sometimes you just need that. Like, I've had periods where I made 12 paintings in a month, and you're like, how did I do that? But sometimes you need it.
I think the result to that is just knowing that you're capable of doing all kinds of things in different scenarios.
But I think part of that too is that we don't always have a fire under us, right? Like there's and that's part of the problem is everybody can produce a lot under stress, but the problems with that are you can't operate under high levels of stress and continue to have good results for very long. And second, sometimes there's not going to be any stress, especially as an artist. most of my stress is in the summer, and then if I don't find ways to keep myself going through the winter, there's no stress for me. I have no deadlines from between September and February or March when I'm not doing shows or applying for shows. So it's those little things of how do you keep yourself doing things, and part of that is breaking it down into baby pieces, not trying to move the mountain all at one time, and just being like, if I move a couple rocks a day, by the time we get to March, the mountain will be moved, but.
Well, so recently, I haven't been shy about this. So I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which is, a distraction.
A distraction.
A distraction.
So humble.
Yes, it's a distraction. But one of the things that I've been recently started doing is I haven't been in my studio, partly because we moved, so it's not built yet. But I don't know how to watercolor. So I've been learning how to watercolor. It's minimal, it's manageable, and then if I need to take a nap or if I need to go do something, I can. So I'm both listening to my body and resting, but at the same time, I'm using this time to learn something new, and it's been quite fun because I'll just sit down. I have this little set that my son gave me, and I'll create a little postcard, and whoever's sitting next to me, I'm like, do you want this? And they're like, sure, and I'll sign my name to it and give it to them. And I'll try it again. And it's sometimes these come out really well, sometimes they don't. I'm on my own journey here. Watercolor, for those that are watercolor artists that have mastered that, I'm in awe to you. That's incredible. But eventually I'll hope to get to that point. But right now I'm still on this student journey and I'm still trying to figure it out. But it's been a great way for me to utilize this downtime. But at the same time, still giving. I'm still creating pretty things out there and handing them to people as a thank you gift for, hey, thank you for letting me paint this with you.
Yeah, and I think probably having all that experience beforehand, trying to get into doing art with finger painting and succeeding at that probably helped you just dive into this as watercolor, right?
Well, what I
was just going to say, for me it wouldn't.
Yeah. Well,
it would make it scarier, I think, right?
You're I'll have to start from square one.
Exactly.
Well, two very different. With oils, I get instant results. I can move the paint around. Watercolors are less forgiving, and I'm learning how to manipulate them to what I want to do. But I don't get those instant results. But I'm figuring it out. Like I said, so those that are really good at it probably could say, yes, you can get instant results, but to be determined. For me.
It's a journey for all of us.
Yes, to be determined, yes.
It's one of those things I think when you look back at it, you'll probably see that your preliminary experience made this easier, but during it, it's probably more intimidating because you're comfortable with one thing and then you're trying to jump outside of your comfort zone. It's hard.
It's now paint with your right hand. Or except you both are probably... No, you're left-handed.
No, I'm right-handed, but when I was doing the figure drawing class here, I did it on purpose because I wanted to...
Not show off.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
I was this entire time I thought she was left-handed.
Well, there's a lot of students in here, and when I started asking about questions and they hear there are other artists in here, I think the intimidation got a little thick. So I jokingly was like, I'm going to draw with my left hand, and I am very much right-handed. So I did, and I think even Yeva and I were even drawing on each other's, and so we were being goofy and silly, and I think it kind of lightened the room up, and I think people approached it with less fear.
Yeah.
Because human figure drawing can be pretty intimidating, so we did it with a spin.
Well, I think that's another beautiful thing about this place is that it really just encourages people to just get out there and try something new, no matter your experience level.
I agree.
And
Absolutely.
that's why I'm grateful to be doing something like this with you guys, because like I mentioned before, this is our 4th segment only, and so this is just something that I wouldn't have even gotten into.
Wait, who are the other 2 segments? Why are we second or third and fourth? Who took precedence?
The first one, and this is just because the way things work around here is we have an idea and then we immediately just dive right into that. And we're like, we have the equipment to do a podcast. Let's just do it. So the first one was with me and Yeva, and we just talked about a little bit about my, I guess, art story with creating nomsters. Which is what I call the creepy, little dudes that I draw.
I tried to get a nomster. It came out really cute.
Aww.
I love it when people do it. I've seen this one girl. She did completely took me by surprise. She came in here and then I taught her all these techniques. This is what I kind of expected everyone to do because this is what people have been doing this whole time. And without provocation, she went on her own path and created something that was basically the equivalent of a Sour Patch Kid with gouache. Awesome. And I was like, I absolutely love this. And I was amazed. I was astonished. I'm like, and it's so for me, it's humbling and amazing to see these people who are either new or have been doing this for a while do their own thing, and I see the potential in all of it. And so that was kind of, we didn't talk about all of that in the podcast, but I'm such a easy to get on a tangent. But in the second one, we talked about my mom, who also works here. Her name is Jenny, and she does Frida Kahlo class, and so I think that was the topic of hers. But she is also just an amazing artist as well. And I guess if we're going to be talking about role models or people that we looked up to as an artist, growing up, she was the one who handed me a piece of paper and was like, draw it yourself. And that moment was a key moment in my life where I was like, wait, I can do this myself. And so then from then on out, I was drawing everything. I think I was really inspired by Tim Burton, and she has always been inspired by Frida Kahlo, and I think Andy Warhol type, just pop art, really bright colors. And so we just got to talk about them and their journey together. So yeah, that was the first two segments, and that's why we have you guys here today, because we're trying to bring together artists that either we know personally or that are from the area, and get to hear their story in relation to mental health. And I think because all of us as artists have roots to that. I think if you do it professionally, especially, you have to.
So too.
Yeah,
your mental health is very heavily tied into what you make.
Oh,
that's why everyone has big egos when you're an artist.
I don't know if I have a big ego. Do I?
Or maybe not
I
ego.
don't think so. I don't know.
I think I try to.
I think I mean like big personality. Like, if you have a personality, like it's cemented. Like I really picture you as happy, sunshine, rainbows. I don't know you well enough, but I know you got the sarcastic type vibes. Where, like you want to poke at the world and
I
be
do.
like.
If somebody shows me a beehive, I'm like, give me a stick. Like
Exactly. In a nutshell, that is Dakota right there in a nutshell. But it's been fun watching everyone's career. I think I get excited from that.
Yeah, me too.
It's been fun. I remember calling Dakota the very first time, saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm at this gallery. It's so much fun. You should totally submit your artwork and join." And then watching his art just completely blossom.
Yeah, that was
and
totally
surpass
an
all of
unexpected
ours.
accident. Like, it was just like when I applied for Park Lane, when you encouraged me, even you were wording it, you're like, you should just try it because it'll be like a fun experience for you to learn how to apply for a gallery, right? And I was like, you're right. And then when they called me and they were like, yeah, we would love to have you in the gallery, I was like, I feel like, you guys saw my art though, right? Like, and I remember for a minute I was really confused, and then after, like, this feeling like came over me. I was like, I feel like somewhere I must have cheated, like on some kind of test or something.
Oh,
Like, I don't know what's going. I tricked these people into thinking that I'm creative and good at it.
Then you have to show up. Right?
Yeah, but then after that, that's the real challenge. Is like, all right, now they've given you the shoes, and you have to make them fit.
Yes.
Oh.
Act as if that feeling is so real, but it is part of becoming an artist and accepting, oh, this is where I am now. Because again, we're the ones that create the roadblocks. We're the ones that put up limitations for ourselves. And if we just understand that's what's happening, and that inner voice is stopping you from taking that next step, it's like once you understand that, you're like, oh no, this is good.
That's why I feel like this is a very wonderful opportunity that I get to sit here and talk with you guys about your personal stories. Like, I got to know so much about you today, and then even more about you that I had zero idea about. And I think it's awesome because, like we were mentioning earlier, like, people see our art, but they don't see the process. And so maybe, hopefully, with this, people will get to know not only you as your artwork, but you as an artist. So.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool thing to sit down and chat, like, even with like somebody like Kim, who I've known for like 10 years, and having these kinds of conversations. I mean, you still learn a ton of stuff about each other, and yeah, it's great.
I learned that I'm not his mentor anymore, and it just, my heart broke.
Just on the business model. You know, I called you like 3 days ago and asked you for advice for like 2 hours. Okay, so I don't want to hear it.
I'm choosing, because that is one thing about art, and for those that are pursuing art for the very first time, that is something to understand what type of art you want to create. Do you want to be in a gallery, or do you want? Because there are people who are millionaires that you even called out Laura Zombie. There's people out there that create a lot of quantity, and are able to do very well. I know artists that just produce things that need to be reproduced, like they're on fabrics and scarves and shower curtains. Like there are so many different avenues of where your art can be, and you can make a pretty healthy income. It's just you have to kind of put your energy on which avenue you want to do first. And for me, I know that I can't paint quantity. I just can't paint quick. I can produce 12 to 13 to 14-ish paintings a year, and that's it. I've tried to produce more. So then I realized this is my pathway. But for those, I'm so envious of that individual that can sit down and create 15 a day.
Yeah, me too.
Good for you, because then you have and then for those that can reproduce that artwork or turn it into patterns and prints, like that is all great, and there is a avenue that you can go.
It's everybody's journey, right? Because you have to find out like what works for you. Because it's the same thing. Like both of us have that same struggle. You can't create the quantity, so you sell very expensive pieces, right? And I can't create the quantity, but I don't want to, nor do I think I have the capacity to be selling like $10,000 paintings yet, so I've had to find other ways to like play to my strengths to be able to still like reproduce that work or sell higher quantities, even though the quantity that I create is lower. And it's it's all a lot of failing forward, all a lot of trying this thing, right? This person said this worked, well, I'll try it. Didn't work for me like it worked for them. What did I do wrong, or what can I try different, right? And how do I adjust?
I would wear yours, and I have his t-shirt. I would wear his art on a t-shirt because it's cool. My son has stickers of his artwork on his laptop. Like, I think that's what's great about your art is it can be transformed into a lot of different vessels. And mine, I don't see anybody wearing my landscape as a t-shirt, so I feel like mine's got kind of limited where you have your message can be put on a lot of different things.
Yeah, but you can make calendars and coasters,
Yeah, you can make like shower curtains.
I would totally buy a shower curtain with your stuff on it, or like a throw blanket. Nobody wants a throw blanket with like my art on it. Like that would be weird. Like because it would fold funny, and like you've got like a girl's arm just like hanging out, or like, I don't know.
I mean, there's also people who buy like life-size pillows of Nick Cage's face. So
those are great though. Those are.
So I guess the thing is as an artist, and I know a lot of times those that are listening to this podcast, they're either thinking about it, or they're emerging artists, or maybe they are professional artists at that point in time.
Do it.
Just believe in self. I think that's our underlying message. Just have the confidence to believe in self, and if your artwork doesn't match anything else out there, good for you.
Right.
Lucky you, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to find that artwork that's unique.
Believe in self, embrace failure.
Yeah,
embrace being unique. Like for a long time I used to hate, I was at the Parkland Gallery where we're both at, I used to hate my art feels like it stands out like a sore thumb there, and it used to drive me nuts because I'd be like, I don't belong here.
Yes.
And after a while I started to realize that because my work stands out like a sore thumb, I sell very well there, right? And like the same thing at these art festivals, right? Like I go to these shows, and because I'm so weird, because I'm so unique, because my art is different from everybody else, like you want to feel like that's a detriment, but it's my best asset. And I've started to learn that.
I had, they didn't want to put their artwork next to mine. I don't want to put my artwork next to Kimberly's, it's too bright. Or sometimes they would put my art at the very back of the gallery.
Good.
And I would still sell
They
it.
always put mine at the back of the gallery, and they still sell. It's like a joke for me every time I come back. I'm like, good old corner.
Exactly.
Where would I be in this gallery if not in the back corner?
Yes, it's like it's those kind of things like that where people would really get their feelings hurt. Like, I can't believe I didn't put mine. It's like, you can put mine anywhere. It's gonna find the right person at the right time.
Yep.
So no, those are really great lessons. It's not really toughening your skin, but it's going back to the word acceptance.
And criticism. I think criticism. We talked on that too. And that's another thing. It's like understanding the role of criticism, right? Whether it's from yourself, whether or not it's from other people. Like understanding that criticism is also an incredible asset as a creative person. If you don't have criticism,
you get bored.
You get bored. You get stale. You get confused, right? If you imagine if you spent like a year like working on a masterpiece, right? And like you spend all this time and you get so excited and you want to know how everybody feels about it, and then you put it on the world, right? And it gets, let's just say like a social media blast goes out to every person in the world, but none of them, you're not allowed to see what any of them say about it. How crazy would that make you, right? You just spend a year working on something, and you don't even get somebody get to hear somebody say they hate it, right? It's such an important part of all of it is like, what's the response once it's done,
great.
right? Like
That's really great. I wonder how I would react to that. Because there's times where I put things out there, especially on Instagram, and you look for, how many likes do you get or what kind of comments do people. I would put things that I didn't like out on social media to see maybe it's how I felt about painting it, not the actual image, and you kind of put it out there. But there's times you put something that you don't get that immediate recognition from. You're like, does this suck? You start to doubt yourself, but our brains are.
I think social media is not accurate. I try to
The
avoid.
algorithm.
I try to avoid the feedback on social media, right? In general, just because of that, right? You could have just because you posted it at 9:05 instead of 9, the algorithm's like, we're not going to show it to people because they're already working, right? Or stupid stuff like that. But
that, or if you get like 100. I heard this like one girl who had like millions of subscribers set up a meet and greet thing and no one actually showed. And it just, not just because they don't exist, but not because they didn't like her at some point, but just because they didn't really like exist. And so it's kind of like a lot of things on social media are definitely, inflated?
Yeah.
It's
not a real place, is what I'm saying. Social media is not a real environment, right? Like there's such a huge difference between us putting our art in the gallery and then sitting in the corner and watching people react.
People's real reactions.
Right. Than there is to
It's
posting something on social media. You get so much more out of it, right? I get so much more out of like putting my art up at a festival than I ever could posting it on social media.
That is true. The raw feedback of, again, don't wear a name tag, just the raw reactions of people, and embrace it and don't get feelings hurt, because every piece of art's not for everyone. Just embrace what people like and not like about it. It's pretty fun.
When you have the opposite things, so I've made things that I hate that everybody hates, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, "Yo, dude, check this out! I got it tattooed on my chest," and you're like,
"Wow,
okay, why?" But anyways, it's really happened multiple times to me. Like where like paintings that I like think that I've made that are absolutely awful. Like people have sent me pictures of tattoos of it. I'm like, all right.
Wow.
All right.
See, there you go. Now it's permanent.
Forever.
Well, for almost ever.
And you feel responsible. You feel responsible for every girl that sees that tattoo and never calls them back, or whatever happened. I don't know.
In the same way that it appealed to them to get a tattoo, there's someone out there who's like, I want to be with you specifically because you have that tattoo.
Oh, exactly. See, I'm looking at the negatives still. No.
The duality of everything. There's a fork in every road.
There is a fork in every road. And the business side of me is like, are you getting commission every time, or royalty every time that photograph tattoos?
No, but I'm not mad about it. I think that if somebody gets, I think it is entertaining when somebody gets my stuff tattooed on them. My immediate reaction is like, I think it's awesome that you tattooed it on me. I think it's weird that the tattoo artist didn't reach out to me, like you paid them to recreate my work. Like showing them and knowing, because I'm not like a huge artist where my stuff's everywhere. Like if this person knows my work, like they know who I am, and I'm sure they were like, check out this artist, I want you to tattoo this, right? Mm-hmm. It does seem weird to me that the tattoo artists I've never had a tattoo artist reach out and say, hey, I am going to tattoo this on something, which I'm not like upset about. It's just interesting.
Well, what's
it's just
interesting
weird.
is he says he's not this famous artist, but I literally have seen groups of people go into the gallery, seek out his artwork, take selfies in front of his art. Like he has this following.
I don't see these selfies.
I know. I would call him up. I was like, you will not believe this. Someone just came in, a group of people just took selfies. I see it all the time. And it's like, this individual sought out your work to take a selfie with it.
I don't think that's real.
They're not real people. They're paid actors.
No, not at all. Well, this has been, I've learned so much from this conversation as well. It kind of makes you think, when you pause and have to think back to kind of your creative process or why you create things, and especially to teach someone else.
Yeah. I mean, definitely hearing about your journeys has inspired me again. I feel like I'm midway through kind of that hump where you guys were. Like, I don't want to go back to retail job, even though I'm doing retail right now part-time at the moment.
Retail is not a bad job. Retail, have pride in that, because it's
I do enjoy it. That's why I'm like, it's something that I know, and that's why I feel comfortable there. But for that same reason, I've gotten trapped. Yes. And so having that opportunity where I broke from that and then started working here exclusively, that was like a nice way of just fully putting myself in a position where I'm like, this is something that I can do as a career. I could just do this all the time. I don't have to go back to doing something like that. But I think having a balance is nice. I like being able to do both.
I think it's the balance piece, because as I was living full life as an artist, I do enjoy. I was volunteering. I was doing things other than art because I needed to have both in my life. Especially as I became an empty nester and my kids moved out of my house. It's like, I used to joke I have all this time on my hands. I need to fill this void, but it's important to have both, and I think that's why I approach my art sometimes. I don't think it's a negative thing that I approach my art as a business, because I enjoy the business side. I just do it on a smaller scale, and I enjoy the creative side a lot.
To me, I just have to separate the two. It's like there's times when I focus on my business, and there's times when I focus on my creations.
Yeah. I like his 3 weeks increments at a time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's important to run your business, right? But,
You've got to.
But it's also it can, like, if you're focused on running your business when you're making your painting, you're making a product and not a piece of art. Sometimes.
Well, I think
for me, it's different for everybody, but that's the way.
I enjoy creating. Again, I think I paint. I enjoy the paint. But it gets me really happy when someone enjoys it enough to purchase this. I absolutely love getting photographs of them installed in someone's home.
Oh, yeah.
I call it my paintings forever home, because it's like, oh, how cool is that? Like I remember the start to finish. I remember when it was just a raw canvas. And now there's this, an image on it, this painting, and now it's living somewhere. And sometimes it's in a different.
What I'm hearing is a description of a child.
I know. I'm just imagining Kimberly's got like a scrapbook at home where she's got pictures of all these empty canvases, like, and this one before he was painted. Look at how cute he is. And then the next page, there's like more empty canvases. These were my favorites. Like, we're not supposed to have favorites, but this 24 by 36.
You know what? And it's probably true because I have progressive shots at the very beginning of my arc and less later. It's just like that first child versus the third child. It's like there's no photos.
Yeah. That's me too. It's hard being an artist and then also having to take it to a business perspective and then having to be a social media influencer at the same time.
So I'm not savvy. I'm trying to hire Jacob to be my videographer because I am not savvy at that. I've tried. I can do it, but that creative process is a long journey for me, and it's sad. I would enjoy doing other things and gladly paying someone to do that.
I think it's definitely
too.
It's definitely worth getting into whenever you guys have like time, or like, I know it's like, who has time to pick up a
very
hobby.
Busy.
Yeah, we're all true Americans here. We're so busy. But yeah, I think it's kind of really, it's another art form that just takes practice. But it's really easy to get into because you just, first off, I would start taking pictures with my phone. So. Yeah. Well, guys, that was another podcast, and yes, this one was much lengthier than the other ones, but that is totally fine in my opinion because I got to spend an hour and almost 3 hours with these people, just getting to know them on a deeper level, and that was 100% worth it for me. So thank you guys for listening. I have some exciting news for our next couple episodes. Hopefully we'll be able to bring some guests that we met at the Bellevue Art Fair in the last couple of days. As I don't know if you guys know, but in Bellevue there is an art fair that happens every year, and we gather local artists, I think all around from the Seattle Bellevue area, and you just get to see these amazing people who have built their craft into a business, and I think it's really inspiring. I definitely can't wait to do something like that myself one day, and hopefully we'll be able to pull some of them aside and get them on our podcast. So thank you guys again for listening, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.